that's.
Years ago we had one, and the armory
Yes.
was used in no trip.
Yes. So anyway, that's, like I said, that's going on, okay. Other than that, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of other boards. I know Tyson and I attended the Legislative Affairs meeting this morning. I thought it was a pretty good informative meeting. Senator Jerry Stevenson was there, and Representative Karen Peterson. And knowing that you probably need something to report on, I'll allow you to report on it.
Another socks and underwear, according to Jerry, when it comes to the budget. He did guarantee clean underwear, he said.
Yeah, yeah.
So, a little better than last year.
And hope that you have a washer in case you need to use it. But I thought it was a good report. I'm trying to think some of the takeaways from that. He spoke a lot about the focus on the housing again and the shortfall there and what needs to take place.
He talked more in depth about the income tax fund, how it's growing, but they're limited on how they can spend it. So they'll probably anticipate another tax cut, income tax cut, but it might include another tax.
To increase
to increase money in other funds where it can be utilized better.
And the whole purpose of that is because most of the funding all has to go to education, which I know you guys know this. And yet the education is actually, they're number 2 now in the nation. Utah's ranked number 2 as far as taking care of, as far as our education and taking care of the teachers and that. So that part was good. So that's why they're kind of leaning towards that whole tax cut from
It's basically
income.
a tax reallocation.
Yeah,
Move
so it becomes a
somewhere else.
reallocation. So we'll be looking for a lot of movement in that area during the session.
They also prioritized all the priority documents, or ratified all the priority documents, so each of the subcommittees put together what the county's documents are, whether it's transportation, housing, social services, education. And then those will be sent to northern Utah. Well, they'll be sent to the Davis County
So the Davis County Legislative Executive Committee
Executive.
will sign off on it. They'll then present it to the Northern Utah Chamber of Commerce. And from there, then it gets submitted to the state. And both Senator Stevens and Peterson said that they appreciate that document because they do rely on that to kind of understand that because it's 2 major counties coming together and really focusing on what the priorities are overall for northern Utah, that it helps them in their decision-making going forward.
And then like LPC meets every week during the session, Nuke does also. Northern Utah Chambers meet every Wednesday morning. And those documents is what drives those discussions and priorities.
Okay. It was a good meeting. Good pre-meeting, knowing that next month, from the 21st on, it will be weekly, which I know you guys are involved as well. So, okay, I'll turn the time over to you guys for your reports.
The hayride, city hayride.
Yeah, last night.
Went over last night. And at 6:30 they had done 400. No, it was 6.
Yeah.
So it was like, unreal. You know, so that was, and I said, you know, it's interesting, even when it was 20 below, or it felt that way, we still got it forever. And so that turns out to be a great thing. And then just kind of leapfrogging on that, I'm a proponent of helping them have other animals, or whatever you want to call it, in the park, you know, kind of make sure we keep up on that so it doesn't become a little blood, you know. I've been there, seen it, and I can't think of her name. She's the one designs where the animals go. She's
Amanda?
Amanda. She's unreal. I mean, she just has an eye for doing things really well. And it's fantastic. I'm not knocking it one iota, but that's something I think we need to really support, and we have as a city. But it was like I drive the train at times for the Rotary, and from about 6:30 to 8, it's bumper to bumper. I mean, I don't know if they keep totals. They used to have a thing. Do they still?
Mhm. Yeah, last
But
year we had
there's-
about 60,000 emails.
I don't think there's anything more in Layton that people see than that. You know, I mean, it's just unreal. You know, I got people saying, "When did you do that? Did you start that last year?" And I go, "Well, it was there last year." It came from humble beginnings, but it's really become a landmark. So, anyway.
Yeah, I got to see Dave ride the train this week.
Yeah, I almost hit you.
No, you might have tried.
But you weren't on a bike. If you were on a bike, I might have got you.
Okay, so Layton CTC has a couple things going on. We, actually, a few of us last month went on a site visit to Youth Impact in Ogden, just because we have some of that community school partnership that we're working on, trying to figure out the best ways to help with like the after-school programs and things that we're doing here. And it was really a really good presentation. So we got some really good ideas, and we'll see how things play out in the future. We also have a community board meeting coming up this Monday at 1. And you're welcome to participate or attend if you'd like. We're also going to do, kind of like we did that kickoff last year, we're going to start at the beginning of the years doing a CTC retreat. It's like a 4-hour, but it's just to reacclimate, if there's any new members, making sure that they understand what we're doing. That's going to be on January 23rd. You should have received an email, but if you did not, I will resend that. And then also, we just got our first CTC newsletter sent out, and so you all should also be on that email list, and it just tells all of the great things that have been going on this year with the CTC, and then all of the other people who have ever participated or said they want to participate. We have sent the newsletter to them, and we have it in translated into Spanish as well. So I actually saw that posted today on their social media, the Spanish version. So some really cool things coming up there. And this is just an FYI, nothing happening here just yet, but I think I may have mentioned the Boulder Way Forward movement that we talked about before, just that to help women and girls thrive in Utah, which uplifts all families. And I found out last week that North Salt Lake City Council is the first city to have done a resolution to be a Boulder Way Forward city, or to be able to kind of support and say, hey, we care about what's happening with our women and girls. And so that's something that I may bring forth at some point in the future, just so you can read about it and see what it's about. And we'll probably get on a working meeting schedule sometime to do a presentation on that. But that's it.
A quick update from Utopia. Nearly 70,000 subscribers, of which 1/7 are actually Layton. So we're the first city to break 10,000, which is pretty cool. And also interestingly, in terms of residential subscribers, the second highest in terms of residential subscribers is actually Idaho Falls. Yeah. It's only been in the last 3 years.
Is that a new one?
Yeah, that was a new one that was brought on.
Is Idaho Falls kind of newer?
Yeah, we've been interacting with them for about 4 years, probably.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But the lines
Yeah,
and the,
no kidding.
it's good. I mean, it's just additional revenue that we generate, which always is good for the foundational cities like us. So things are going well.
Cool.
Do you have anything?
Well, as far as the Utah League of Cities and Towns, there's a board meeting Monday, so I don't think we're because we haven't met yet.
Is that your first one?
No, I'll do the second one. But right now, it's housing. They had the interim meetings, and they're proposing this idea of affordable housing, and what that number actually is surprising. It's in the 400s, and like, how's that affordable? But I saw that the governor also in his proposed budget that he released, it was today or yesterday.
Yesterday.
He's got something in there for low interest loans for developers to help with, once again, try to figure out how to build more houses, and whether that savings gets to the,
Yeah.
I don't know, but, yeah,
One of
that's
the
what,
things, and maybe we need to discuss it more when they discuss it, but
yeah,
one of the things that I saw was the idea of, as part of our like bucket of things we can do in affordable housing, that some cities would be given the ability to do by right zoning as not a mandate, but
Right.
as just a tool.
you can do it if you want, yeah, that was brought up in the interim,
Okay.
be part of the bill.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's gonna be, and then it'll be part of the tools in the moderate income
Yeah.
housing plan. Yep,
Interesting.
yep, it's all part of it.
The only thing I wonder about, and I know you are frustrated with it as well, all of us are, I mean, is, can somebody please define affordable so we can all work off the same page?
Well, we did,
You know.
400,000.
Well,
probably
no,
not.
that,
Yeah,
That
but on
wasn't
what
a
size lot?
consensus, that was
That's
somebody's
the
idea.
discussion, I think, going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
That's the scary
So,
part.
but the league is in a good spot with helping to negotiate, so that's,
that's good.
and keeping it from being mandates and allowing it to be a tool. And the cities can use if they want to, but not be a mandate like we,
I was actually happy to see
Yeah.
the language that
Yes.
was, it was more permissive use,
Yep.
not required.
Okay, those are good reports, you guys, I appreciate that. I want to move our meeting along, so let's go ahead and go along down to our audit report, which, once again, I'm going to turn the time over to Tracy and Rob, I guess. So, thank you for being here.
Like the mayor mentioned, I'm here with Robert Wood from the audit firm, and he'll give his report here after I review some of the highlights of the financial statements. Before I do that, in order for us to actually officially complete the audit, then I have to review this financial risk assessment with you, or fraud risk assessment, I should say. It's from the state auditor's office. And what they do is they have us go down through and do just a checklist, basically, of our internal controls. Do we have conflicts of interest, or policies about ethical behavior? And you may all remember you sign the form every year and so forth. And is your finance director a CPA? And different things give you a score on here. Ultimately, what it comes down to is we earned 375 out of 395 points, so we're in the very low risk category, which is where we want to be. So I don't know if there's any questions about that. I just quickly review that. There you go.
Thank you. Nice to see it in action. Really, just to interject on that one, the states continue to keep this step. Really, it's for you as a council and administration to think about what controls do we have, and is there any changes that we need to make. That's the sole purpose of why you have us, not to fill out the checklist, but for you to discuss what controls and operations do we have here, and do we need to make any changes?
I mean, the one minor thing that brings our score down from the perfect score would be having an audit, internal audit function, which my department does, but that's kind of auditing myself, right? So it's not really a separate internal audit function. Some of your very large cities, say like Salt Lake City or a county, some of those have a person, maybe two, that perform an internal audit function. A lot of your very large corporations have that. A city our size, we just haven't seen that it would be, cost-benefit analysis of it, would it be worth it?
But those are people from within the city.
Right, so you'd have an employee
An
that
employee,
basically
yeah.
does what your auditor
Right.
does full-time. They just pick things and they go through it. At the county, I know they pick different programs and their internal auditor goes through that. And so, like Rob mentioned, that's something that I guess if we wanted to strengthen things at some point, then we could consider something like that. Not something that either of us are necessarily
It's
recommending.
rare. I mean, we do like 16 cities and nobody has it.
Right.
I
You're in
gotta
the same
say-
boat as everybody else.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with our situation and the fact that we actually have two residents that also sit on our review committee who, as Clint and I just witnessed, I mean, these guys, boy, they do their due diligence, they dive in so deep, and I know Tracy gets
Speak another
answers.
language.
Yeah, they know how to speak their language, they're professionals in this
Yeah.
field, so I'm confident in the report and the way it come out, and I really, truly appreciate their service.
Oh,
Because,
for
you know,
sure.
they're volunteering on our behalf.
And maybe so you have an idea, and honestly, that should give you as a council a lot of comfort, that I know for sure, Mr. Christensen's on there, Dan Christensen, he came with a lot of very good questions to the audit committee meeting. So did Doug Belliston. I know specifically Doug Belliston went through every word of this report. You know, I mean, there were a few periods and commas and things that I changed, but on top of that analysis, asking me, when he reviewed it, asking me questions about, well, why is this and why is that and why is the other, and in this part of your MD&A, maybe you could enhance your description of why this is this way, and actually giving a lot of good suggestions to make the document more, I don't know, just more
Sound.
explanatory to the reader. The management discussion and analysis in the financial report here, if you were going to read something, starts on page 11. It's about 10 or 11 pages long, and that would probably be the best thing for you as a council to read. Discusses each of the funds and why their financial position changed and what things affected that, and just an overall financial review, rather than try and dig into, you can dig into it as much as you want, but the MD&A is really the place to look at and see some of these types of highlights that I'll go over with you. So I'll just spend the next few minutes going over some of these. Revenue from the general fund. We like to talk a lot about the general fund during budget season and this time of year because it's the main tax fund where we have fees and things that we collect, and it supports all the general services of the city. Police, fire, streets, parks, public works. And so you can see things like, our property tax. If we look at actual to actual, down a little bit. That can fluctuate because we're only allowed to budget this much here in the middle. And so, actually budget to actual, we were up because we can only budget what we received or what we were allowed to budget the year before. It's kind of a weird scenario. But sales tax also, if we were to look at that, budget to actual, down a bit. Even actual to actual, it was still down, about 200,000. If we come down here a little ways, we can say, okay, well, what does all that mean? Our overall revenues, and these other things are kind of outliers, but our overall revenues, budget to actual, we were ahead almost 4.2 million. Where does that come from? Well, here you can see that my recommendation for budget and what's in here is interest income, mostly. There's some other miscellaneous things, but it's mostly interest income. My budget estimate was obviously very low compared to what happened, and a lot of that had to do with just the PTIF fund, the State Treasurer's Investment Fund. That rate was kind of at a historical high for most of this particular fiscal year. So you had about $3 million in interest income that really helped make up any deficiencies that we might have had in this budget. And then also in the energy tax area of Dominion, which is now Enbridge, I think, and Rocky Mountain Power, they had some additional income there as well. Now, actual to actual, they were down a little bit. Budget to actual, we had an increase there. So that contributes to what I'll show you here in a little bit as far as an increase in our overall general fund balance. That's the revenue side of it. The expense, and I promise you that I went to a class this year that told me this type of a presentation is ridiculous. So I promise you I'll come up with something much more friendly for next year when you have a chart this big on here. But what I attempt to present here is our budget to actual in each department and division within the department, and come down and see that budget to actual, we were under budget by $3 million. I like to subtract out of that wages, because as administration, Alex doesn't allow the departments to spend wages on other things. So someone might be 4 employees short, and so they decide, well, let's go buy I hate to use police as an example, we'll use public works this year, we'll go buy another dump truck, right, because we didn't have all the employees we want. We don't allow that to happen, and so I subtract that out from our savings. This is a kind of an anomaly thing that we don't need to really get into, but just an accounting standard thing. And then I subtract out any open purchase orders because those carry over. And so then ultimately we still end up at 1.2 million under budget on our spending. So if we take that, we take the 1.2 million and the 4.1 million here, and we add those together, we can see that we projected that our ending fund balance in the general fund would be 4.9. It ended up at 11.4, and it was those two numbers, mostly interest income and underspending by the departments. And so those two areas bring us to, now this number differs a little bit from what's in the financial report because this is only the general fund. In the financial report we combine a few different things. We combine B and C and alcohol and general fund. And so you would see this number being 22.5 in the financial report. But overall, the unassigned fund balance at the end of the year, healthy fund balance, 24%. We're allowed to have that number and our assigned be up to 35%. And so, we're nowhere near the cap as far as that goes. If you combine our assigned fund balance with this, we're at 28%. And so we're still under the 35% cap, but I would call that a healthy position. I think this is a good position for us to be in because the revenue side of things is becoming a little bit unstable. I guess I could use that word, right? Our sales tax, you'll see in a different slide, is kind of flat, and so it's not experiencing those spikes. We're not having extreme wage pressure like we were for the last few budget cycles, but I think there will still be wage pressure, and there's just other operating expense pressure as far as inflation, right? It's not as rapid a rate of inflation, but things just cost more now. We're all aware of that. We just got done talking about that with housing. So,
Do you anticipate the interest rate for our cash to be, you said it was historically high, have those been?
it's already
Coming
come
back?
down, right? In this fiscal year, it's already come down,
Okay.
right? I was telling Alex, I was looking at a personal money market account that I have, and 2 months ago it was earning 3.5, and this month it only earned 1.5.
Yeah.
So it's already dropped, a money market's already dropped 2% in just 2 months. I thought that was a pretty extreme drop myself, considering the Fed's only lowered the rate half, it's 0.75% in 2 meetings, so, I don't know. I guess they'll pay you whatever they feel like paying you, fair or not.
I have
But-
just one question, Tracy, on the slide before. I just want to make sure before I move on. Can you go back a couple of slides? One more.
Sorry.
I guess the budget, what was the budget idea for the energy tax? Were you anticipating it to be lower?
As far as this
Yeah.
number compared to what we got, one, we established the budget before I actually know what the final numbers are. And so just, one, trying to be a little conservative in this area, not knowing what's going to happen. And I think what happened in '23 that I wasn't necessarily aware of until closer to the end of the year was a rate increase on Rocky Mountain Power, or maybe it was Enbridge. I know one of my bills went up a lot. But anyway, that,
And they're not foreseeing any additional, probably go through the governor's office to get.
I haven't heard of any. They just had increases, so I don't know that the Public
Okay.
Service Commission would allow them to do it again so soon.
I think they're
But
meeting
they-
next week,
the-
Public Service, I think they're meeting next week to
Oh,
discuss
yeah.
it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then again, those type companies, large companies, are also experiencing the same kind of pressures, right? And maybe even more so from their employee groups. And so, that's most of their justification for increasing the last time they did.
We are just the city is beneficiaries as a city, even if the residents have to pay more. So, we win and then we lose in this, when outside kind of pseudo governmental entities, raise the rates. So thank you, that was the question I had.
Yeah, no problem. On the enterprise funds, I just went more with where are we at as far as our net position in those funds. water fund, you would look at this and say, oh, 31 million, that's a giant number, but we also have 18.5 million in projects that we've already committed to, and so and this weird pension adjustment, sorry, but I need to put it in there for me just because I don't know exactly what they're gonna do with that all the time. And so when I bring that down to an unrestricted net position in water, I'm saying 11.8 million is sitting there, and we talk about large projects and a full 5-year plan that has many projects in it. And so we're in a good position there as far as being able to move forward with those projects and not delay. Our revenue stream there, charges for services increased. Stormwater, same type of analysis, right? We have carryover projects. In this case, we also have in 2025 budgeted use of fund balance towards projects. After we eliminate all those things out of our year-end reserve, then we end up at 8.3 estimated for 2025. Sewer fund, good position. I have a slide here in a minute to show you how that goes after we did the sewer rate increase. EMS fund, maintaining a healthy position. The pool fund, we'll review that again during 2025 and see where we are with these commitments and things, and see if we need some sort of a budget amendment before the end of 2025 to help continue to keep that going. Here we have street lighting with a healthy balance, refuse fund, athletic, UIA, and then secondary water. This secondary water piece, I've said this before, but that's just the contract that we have to service Weber Basin Water's side of things. Our secondary water system is accounted for in the water fund, so it's all part of that same fund. Our other funds, as far as expenditures go, we can see that budget to actual in a number of these other funds that are special revenue ones, we were in the positive in all of those areas, didn't overspend. Some of these, like we talked about earlier, the RDA, we budget things, commitments and things, we didn't necessarily spend all those. Capital projects, we have a large amount of capital projects. We spent 11 million of that during the year. We still have about 33 million of those that are on the books as far as projects go that need to be spent for. I mean, the major one that would take up not half of that, but a good portion of it would be the EOC dispatch center. That's $15 million worth of this number. Ramp, as far as revenues go, generated more than we budgeted. Building services generated more. My budget number was probably off a little bit there as far as that goes. And then the Prop 1 transit also generated quite a bit more than what we had budgeted. So those are our other governmental funds that we have. As far as our sewer revenue goes, with the rate increase that we did, July, August, September, October is all I could provide at this point. And so you can see that in 2023, through those 4 months, we had generated 3.7 million. In 2024, we generated 350,000 more than that. If you annualize that amount, then it'd be about $1 million more, which you may recall from the presentations back around budget time, that was about what we had projected to generate off of that rate increase that we did. Sales tax revenue, just real brief, in the current fiscal year, so far if we were to look at actual to actual comparison, in the first 3 months, 139,000 ahead. If we look at budget to actual, we're 227,000 ahead. And so, I guess I shouldn't really call that flat. It's 4% ahead of the budget so far this year. Our big determiners obviously will be November, December. We don't see those until January, February timeframe. So around the time we're preparing the next budget. If we were to look at last year, that's kind of ancient history, but actual to actual, it was down 200,000. So that's kind of where that trend was for 2024.
Could you go back, Tracy, please?
What was that?
The slide before. So you've got a percentage change on this side, 7% up, and then 0.07 and 0.47. We wonder what's going to happen on the percentage on the left.
Oh, up here?
Yeah, the actual. Yeah, you've got.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy swing
Yeah,
here
yeah,
compared
it's like
to here, right?
What do you think?
And some of that could be, you know, I don't go through every month in detail and make sure that the tax commission has aligned things exactly the way they should have. Some of this could have been
Quarterly?
carryover from June,
Okay.
and it got reported in July.
Okay.
Just depending on when the businesses pay those sales taxes. I've never made a practice of trying to true it up, you know, exactly to the penny. Because year over year, it's kind of ends up being, you know, a wash, I would say. But that is a big anomaly
Yeah.
when you get that, and then here, you know, hopefully
Drops.
this isn't more of the reality, right?
Right,
Of
that's
just
what I'm
a-
saying.
That's what
Yeah,
you're saying.
that's- yeah.
So I apologize.
Well, I guess we'll find out. Things are slowing down.
So that's my part of the presentation. I'll turn just a few minutes over to Rob, and he can talk about their audit reports.
Well, thank you for decorating the table tonight. I appreciate it. It looks great.
Did we
Very
get
festive.
did we get a check mark for that?
Yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
idea.
Okay.
We didn't write this up as a finding because we're
Yep.
presenting it tonight.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be with you. Always love working with Layton City. We've done this for a while, but we're trying to be very thorough in what we do and making sure that your financial statements are properly prepared. We had a great meeting before this one with your audit committee, who also helps go through your financials in great detail. Love the two professionals. One of them actually helped train me when I started my career in the state auditor's office. So great opportunity to collaborate just a little bit and make sure that these are presented. Tracy's given a highlight of each of your funds, concur with that presentation. And in our audit opinion within the financial statement, there's 3 reports that we do. The first one is an opinion, the independent auditor's opinion on the financial statements, not only your entity-wide statements where we're talking about all of our governmental funds, so we call it governmental activities. Then you have your business activities, which is all your enterprise, your utility type funds, including EMS, pool, and so forth. We feel that those, along with your governmental funds and your proprietary funds as presented within this book, are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. It's the best opinion I can give you as an organization. We call it an unmodified opinion. We also refer to it as a clean opinion. Now, when we conducted the audit, we did find adjustments and some corrections that needed to be made, but we have discussed those, presented them, and reviewed them with management. Management accepted those. They also gave us just a few as they were preparing this book and noticed, hey, wait a minute, this is off, here's an adjustment that needs to be made. So making those adjustments, we feel that these statements are fairly presented as required by standards. The last 2 reports are, one of them is required by governmental auditing standards, which requires that we look at your internal controls over financial reporting. We also look at your compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, agreements, and so forth, like UIA, Utopia is part of that. And we do some confirmation work with Utopia and how that is handled. Looking at that, it's not an opinion, but it's a report. We look at the controls over the significant areas. How do you process your payroll? Who does the approval for the pay raises and so forth, or is it all left to just one person? So we look at not only those, we look at your disbursement process. You've got a chart that said this is, you know, when certain purchases are between these thresholds, this is what needs to be done. When they reach other thresholds, sometimes if they get to a very significant dollar amount, it needs to come to council. So we'll look at the process and what happens in each of those scenarios, or in some of those scenarios on a test basis. We didn't find any discrepancies with that process or the cash receiving that's done across the hall here. So happy to report that that's what we, a clean report, not really an opinion, but no material or significant deficiencies were noted. And then the final report is based on the state auditor's office. They put out what's called the state compliance guide. In that guide, it's divided into 2 sections. There are certain sections that you have to do every single year. Some of that we've already talked about, your budgeting process, amending your budget throughout the year. If you're increasing expenditures, you've got to pull a public hearing and allow the public to make comment on whether they agree or disagree with doing that, and then you have to obviously roll calls on whether you approve those. We talked about the fund balance percentage on any committed, assigned, and unassigned fund balance in the general fund needs to be between 5 and 35%. Right now you're sitting at 28.4%, if I remember right. So you're within the guidelines that the state code has sent. We also look at how do you handle the fraud risk assessment. Do you handle and submit that and then ship it to the state once a year? And there's other things, governmental fees. There's also stuff that we do on a 3-year basis. That's the other side. There's an impact fee report that Tracy has to report each and every year, along with the financial statements to say these are the sources that they were collected from, and this is where we're spending that money. And you have 6 years to do it after you collect the revenue. If you don't, then they need to be refunded back to the developer. There's also enrolling people in the Utah retirement systems and some others. What you do with restricted revenues, such as your B&C. Your B&C money can't be used to go buy cars for administration or the water department. They need to be spent on roads or road maintenance, on qualified projects and so forth. So we look at how you're handling some of that stuff. You also, we talked about the alcohol tax, got mentioned. Those have restrictions. You can't use that just to pay officer salaries, but it has to be used for certain things. So we look at all those aspects because the state tells us this is what we want you to do. So that really for us is more of a checkbox. It's a yes or a no. Sometimes there could be a little bit of gray area, or is it material and whatnot. Happy to report we didn't find any discrepancies when we go through that guide on how the city is complying with the standards. One potentially minor issue, but we felt it was so de minimis. It was like $700 that we passed on it. So nothing really to formally report in writing to you as a committee, as a council.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions?
Any questions, guys?
I guess we got a pin of rose on somebody's nose. So.
He's been thoroughly worked over the last couple of hours, not only between myself and my staff, but between his audit committee. I mean, it's amazing how often you can go through this book. And it's like, how did I've gone through this 3 times. How do you find this stuff? Well, it's just going into details, and there's 160 pages here. That's a lot of data and a lot of opportunity to make errors, because not everything's linked to something that's already reported. A lot of this is how we put it together and checking and cross-checking and word changes. You mentioned Doug probably read every word. I mean, Doug catches some stuff that I don't, but
Yeah.
we've been going back and forth even as far as I hesitated to call Tracy last night and said, well, I don't want to propose this, but here's one additional change that I think you should make before you publish this document. And he stayed late last night, or an hour or so after we got off the phone, to make that change, because it was a better presentation, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it was. But it's going through those type of details to make sure that, hey, we want to be able to put out the best financial statement report. We don't want to have errors in our book. Because some organizations that I've been at, they don't really care. They say, we're a government, who cares about us? Well, bondholders, banks, the people that get this statement are the ones that care. So it's your report, but I take great pride in what you guys put out.
Well, I think our residents are our biggest concern. We're here for them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So job well done all around by everybody.
Yep, very much so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on now to item number 4, which is our presentation of the Layton City Comprehensive Long-Range Economic Development Plan, which, once again, I want to welcome our planning commission here to join us and to go over this. We appreciate everybody's hard work and dedication and your continued service on the commission. So thanks. We really appreciate it. So, Chad, are you going to run the show, or are you
Just
going
a
to?
couple words really quick, and I'm going to turn it over to Lon to introduce our guests from Better City. But I just wanted to acknowledge the work that both Weston and Lon have done on this effort, working closely with Better City. They've done just a great amount of work on this. This is a great plan. We're excited to have Better City here tonight to present it to you. Without further ado, to Lon to make a little introduction. We'll get on.
Thank you, Chad. Yes, we have Jason Godfrey and Trina Kittleson from Better City with us to present this document for the Planning Commission. Most of you, if not all of you, may have been reached out to early in the spring to ask you questions about economic development and the council as well. In the city, and any ideas or thoughts you might have that we're putting to this plan. They've done a lot of great work. We're excited about this plan. The primary purposes for us when we applied for this grant are right here in front of you. Really, we wanted to know where we stood economically And this type of plan has never been done in Layton City, and I'm not sure how many plans like this exist across the country, but it's comprehensive, and then there's some detail per request. So with that, I will turn the time over to Jason and Trina.
Excellent, thank you, Lon. One of my favorite seat, I always get whiplash while looking back and forth.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going with it.
I don't know, see, I got
If you
better
want to
offers.
sit by, it's okay.
You bite, snitch loose. Like Ralph.
So the first thing, it's a privilege to be here, and this has been a really exceptional process. And the first thing I want to highlight is that, it's got our names in UDA, which is the urban design firm that we work with on it. But really, it's Chad's team has really played a really significant role in this. It's probably one of our more collaborative processes we've ever been through. This report and this whole process is very groundbreaking. We've never done anything like it. We've never seen anything like it. And we're really excited to present the conclusions because there's some really interesting revelations and interesting things we found through the process. But I really want to thank Chad, Lon, and Weston for their work on this. And it's been, they've pushed back, challenged, helped us to really make this a better document, which we're really grateful for. So we'll start with the market analysis. And so this isn't a typical strategic plan where it'll tell us about jobs and businesses and stuff. It's very targeted to how do we make this Layton forward document real and catalytic, how do we make it happen? And so the first thing to look at is the retail market. And it's interesting, there's some surprises. Of course, you saw the budget and retail, the sales tax is a significant component of your revenues. This isn't real. 99% real retail leakage means that 99% of every dollar your residents spend on retail is captured by the city. That's impossible in the world of Amazon, right? So what that means is you actually have more people coming from outside the city spending money here than your residents are spending on online sales. Really significant. It was surprising because the mall is a couple of years old, if I'm not wrong. Right? And some of the retail, you look around, it's a little bit tired. We thought, no, it's Layton's losing its mojo. That's not what the numbers say. So I think there's kind of a tendency to panic and say, hey, some of our neighboring cities have more updated retail. It's still, Layton is still a power center for retail. From a real estate standpoint, vacancies are down to 3.5%, so it's falling. And this last piece is interesting. So the world is changing, as you know, and big form factor retail is losing to specialty retail in smaller form factors. So nationwide, the mid-tier retail is declining, and that's really what Layton is mostly have. Most retail it falls that category. So you're bucking the national trend. What's doing well is luxury and the discount. Those two extremes are doing well. The middle's kind of getting crushed. In Layton, it's doing fine. So it's interesting. We'll come back to that. All right, residential. We don't need to talk about residential too much. You guys know it ad nauseum. Just a couple interesting things. From a trend standpoint, millennials and Gen Z, there's two things that are happening here. One is household sizes are really crashing, whereas there used to be 4 and 6 people in a household. Now it's 3.2 and falling rapidly. So that's why you're seeing our population's not growing that much in the United States, and yet we have this housing crisis. How is that? Well, it's because you need more houses per capita because the size of households falling. But there's also a preferential difference. That this generation, these rising generations, have much less of proclivity towards, I want a quarter-acre home, freestanding, toward I want somewhere in a community where it's walkable and where there's a sense of place. So as you look forward, you can't build for the rearview mirror. You have to look forward and say, what is the rising generation? What's their preference? All right, your office and industrial, we'll talk about this when we get to the Southgate more, or the business parks, but, you know, you're absolutely crushing it when it comes to what's happening, not only on the base, but in the surrounding areas. It's interesting that this is a really interesting trend, and it's not going down, right? The world we live in, you know, Layton is really well positioned to profit or benefit from kind of the global challenges on a global scale. And then healthcare, you're strong in healthcare, and nationwide that's an important trend as well. Okay, I won't go into details on this, but this was a significant part of the effort in the report to say, okay, based on, you know, all the math we did in the background to project forward what are the needs for these different, you know, housing and office and retail, what you have, what do you need? And so there's a lot of math behind it, and projected, you know, 5 and 10 years, how many square feet do you need to bring online just to keep up with demand? And this is important when you talk to the development community, because you need to be able to say, look, we've done the math, and yes, you can go ahead and build more retail. We thought you might be oversaturated, but actually that's not the case. That there's demand going forward for more retail space within the city. Okay, any questions on those pieces where it's just at a high level?
Why is single-family housing not even on that chart?
On the residential, is that what you mean?
On this chart you're showing right now, you're showing demand for multifamily, demand for office, demand for retail. Is there no demand for single-family housing?
There actually is demand for single family, but the focus here is on the town centers. So what is the impetus for this report is how can we integrate town centers or strengthen the town centers? And so single family is not really a component of that. So great observation. But yes, there is demand.
Okay.
Is that fair, Trina?
Oh, yeah.
So as Lon pointed out, with town centers, they're an important part of the Layton Forward plan and an important part of really placemaking and community building going forward. And if you think about town centers, the principal benefits are transportation. At transportation nexus, you have density, and it creates affordable living, but also with a high standard of living. And so the effort is, okay, how do you make the town centers more livable, more dynamic, more relevant in today's market? So some guiding principles are pedestrian friendly, and we said walkability, but we just decided or determined through the interviews that's kind of that has some tricky connotations. People say, oh, you're taking away our cars. No, that's not it. But when you're within this area, it should be fun to walk through or feel safe to walk in this environment. So creating places where it's not drive, park, walk, get out, drive back, but browse. Also, you know, pedestrian-oriented development means connectivity to the communities. So not walled off retail, walled off residential areas, but making a flow between them so there's more of a connection. And then finally, as a country, we're way overparked, and that's also true within Layton. That we have virgin parking spots that have never been parked on, right? Because boy, someday on Black Friday we're going to need that spot, right? And so there's a movement nationwide to say, what can we do with this asphalt that would be more productive? And so that's a big part of town centers, is like really make sure we're optimizing that parking and using it in a way that enhances the development.
So we changed our parking ordinance, I don't know how many years ago, Chad?
About three and a half.
Has there been a change? I mean, all of your data has been collected after that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious from Chad's or Lon, you guys' point of view.
Well, the reason
Does
we
that
did that was
change?
because we saw the same thing. If you look at, I always use Target as the classic one, and Target would probably be really mad if I said this, but it's the truth. There are parking spaces there that are never used. And we've been out there on Black Friday, and those furthest parking spaces don't have a car in them. So that's the reason for that parking change a few years ago, was to acknowledge that we can make some adjustments and have some additional development, and that's kind of some low-hanging fruit areas.
So one place we've saw redevelopment is like the old Kmart parking lot. Is that a effect of that change we
It
made.
is, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, a lot of it, I think going forward, developers, it's easy for them to take advantage of those changes, and it's the ones that are the legacy parking lots that say, you know, maybe they haven't had the vision, or the property owner hasn't, you know, they don't know what to put there, what's really useful, what, you know, and so they don't see it. And so part of this is, as we present the picture, like you can reuse those, repurpose those parking lots and help
Stay
push
within
those
code,
legacy
but
lots.
yeah, exactly.
Shorten them, right? So now people that actually have a real truck can't park in them. Still mad from 3 years ago.
There's a few, we're not gonna go into that one, so
That's
a challenge.
okay. I only do this when I'm reminded.
Glad you could provide that reminder. There's a couple economic strategies that are pertinent to this, because as again, you move forward in, yeah, the next one, as you move forward to the new economy, and as aerospace and defense plays a greater role in the local, you know, the Layton-based but regional economy, then some questions arise. And the first is workforce development. And I really appreciated some of the comments you made or some of the things you're working on. What happens with the schools is so critical to what happens in economic development, you know, 20 years later. And frankly, when we worked with Wasatch Front Regional Council on a strategic plan, we said, you have a really glaring issue here, because with your current demographics and the way demographics are changing and the kinds of careers people will go to in these demographics, and then the kind of jobs you're recruiting, you have a huge gap, okay? And it's not, so you're either gonna have to import all the people for your jobs, and that's certainly gonna help the housing situation, or you need to focus on education and train people for the jobs that are out there. And especially the Boulder Way Forward, that's a huge part of this, because bringing women and children into tech and STEM type occupations is the easiest way to fill these gaps. And so, big proponent of Boulder Way Forward and the work that you're doing. It takes a village to raise a worker. And you know, we're not saying Lon and Chad start workforce development, but we're saying get plugged into this ecosystem, and what can the city do to help bridge the gap between industry and education. And then we talked about transit, right? And you know, public transit doesn't really work if you have single-family homes that are spread out, right? There's just the economics don't work. But as you create density, then all of a sudden you can create transit corridors that make sense. And so these town centers is a really good, Layton Forward Plan is visionary, and the town center concept is really critical to this, because you create nodes, right? And if you're trying to address affordability, you know, housing's one piece, but if you can make some progress on the transportation side as well, that's another piece of the equation. So the plan, we're working on the final drafts of it. We agree in principle, that's what we're presenting to you, just doing the dots and crosses, T's and I's. Within a couple weeks, you'll have the final plan. In the plan, in each section explains, you know, why this is a strategy, you know, what specifically needs to be done, and the key principles behind it. So let's talk about the urban centers. And this has been a really great process, because initially there was 7, I think, urban centers identified.
6 town centers, 2 urban centers.
6 town centers, 2 urban centers, and then we added a couple of others we looked at. Now, definitionally, an urban center is different than a town center. Urban is just bigger scale, so it's easy. The mall is an urban center, right? It's not a quaint little walkable node. It's a larger scale thing. We started with a kind of a redesign effort, and then the mall sold to Second Horizon Capital. So we put that on hold, knowing that there's a different ownership group. But Lon and Chad have had several discussions with them, and looking forward to kind of when the dust settles after the new year, maybe moving forward with a plan. This is a really exciting possibility, because the new owners, from what we can tell, when they've said, have a vision. And this is an opportunity for you to take kind of a tired, outdated concept and refresh it in a really catalytic way. And we would encourage you to think big. I don't know if you saw the announcement about Larry Miller, downtown, west side of Salt Lake, and how they're doing this big project. The future goes to the bold. The future belongs to those who are bold. And I think you have a generational opportunity with the mall here, if they're willing to step up and play ball, to say, hey, what's a vision that, you know, that connects the conference center, that creates walkability, that creates housing, integrates housing, and really create a you know, what the Layton Hills Mall was when I was in high school and when Tracy was in high school, right? Recreate that with the new form factor, right? With what the new generation is looking for. So really exciting opportunity there. And then the historic downtown, the UTA is doing a study there, so we kind of deferred on that one because they're undertaking that study. All right.
Basic question, what are you saying is historic downtown?
Yeah, it's the Main Street.
Gentile?
So where the yeah, the front runner is, that's what we call the historic, yeah.
Okay.
We're glad they're taking it on. It's really challenging. It's really challenging, you know, with all the transit corridors and stuff. So, okay, the retail centers. We redesignated a couple that were called town centers, but we said, you know what, they don't fit the definition. Go back to the start. We said, okay, it's got to be walkable. It's got to be connected with the community. It's got to have gathering spaces. And these two don't really have any of those, and they won't. So it's just a recognition that because of the transit, you know, the traffic you have, because of the way it's built out, there's just not a lot of opportunities there. So we redesignated these as retail centers and said, don't try and, you know, put that square peg in a round hole, and just make some marginal improvements that will improve there. You know, work with the developers to make marginal improvements. Okay, you have two legacy town centers, Gordon Fairfield and Gentile Fairfield, both of which don't necessarily meet the criteria of a town center but have that potential. And part of the plan then is you'll see that we made some recommendations that, okay, if you can work with the property owners and get some development in there, you can make some really significant changes and pedestrian access and so forth to make these into more walkable, more, you know, add some public space type areas that make them into true town centers. The Gentile and Fairfield one is especially interesting because that area had a significant change recently, and if you're going up Gentile, you have this amazing view of the canopy of Smith's gas station. Were that gone, however, you would have an amazing view of the temple. And you know, we bring in the people from Pittsburgh and look at it like, wow, this could be phenomenal. And there's a vision out there where you have like a reception area and some probably not coffee shops, but you know, some ice cream shops or some ways to pull the, you know, you got some traffic going there to pull it in and integrate this section and really create an iconic little node that can become one of the signature areas, not only of Layton, but of the area. So some really exciting possibilities.
And utilizing it as an anchor, really, the temple, but can people go on a date before or after and go out to eat somewhere nearby there? Or can the youth groups go and get some ice cream or do something fun nearby? Can you walk from the temple somewhere that's enjoyable to hang out and spend some time and creating that synergy from an asset that can be more than just, a single postcard shop.
Isolated, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's gonna be a tough sell to remove that canopy, knowing how much they make off of that corner.
Yeah.
Not to remove it, but to move it, maybe to move it to.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
exactly.
gonna say, yeah, you'd
You
have
just
to
want that view.
relocate.
You can put it somewhere else, and yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's two new town centers, right? With the West Layton Town Center, Gordon Highway 89. And so a part of the effort was to identify what would make these really have that town center character, where they're walkable, you integrate well the multifamily, the density, to create really great shopping nodes. And then finally, the South Gate Town Center, it's got the same challenges because of traffic, but there's some things to do there that would make a better gateway. I mean, a lot of people, that's what they know of Layton, right? They drive to the base and drive out. What can you make that? How can you make that more of a landmark for the city? So that becomes a really important little node. Not a real town center, but at least a step in that direction.
Could didn't mention anything about Gordon and Fairfield. That seemed to be a challenge.
There's some opportunities though, because it's overparked and with, if the
Rite Aid
89.
building,
Sorry?
the Rite Aid building.
Yeah, it's like
The one,
haunted.
yeah.
Yeah, you can't keep anybody in there.
There's some retail that's really challenged, which it actually creates an opportunity, right? And
Yeah.
if you get more, another grocer up on the 89 town center,
Mhm.
then you kind of get to be over grocered, and then this site all of a sudden becomes an opportunity. And it's really well positioned. It's got a lot of bones that would make it a great town center, so it's kind of taking advantage of the market has spoken with the current form factor, so great, let's re-envision it. Great, thank you for bringing that up. And so the plan, in the body of the plan, there's kind of a high-level description of what the town centers can be, and an evaluation, and then some math around what, how much retail it can support and so forth. In the appendices, there's some more detailed versions of kind of conceptualizing what can go there. Yeah, that's the appendix. And that concludes our analysis or overview of the plan. Are there any questions or feedback?
So you're saying that the overall plan will be released when?
About 2 weeks. We're just doing the final drafts of the edits of it.
That'll come back before you and the planning commission take a look at that one.
So how much time are we gonna get to kind of review it though? Like, I guess what I'm saying is if you get it in 2 weeks, I mean, I think we need ample time to go through it, especially knowing the planning commissioners, need to look at it too.
Plenty. We're not under a deadline to adopt this. We'll make sure it's done. Plenty of time for the planning commission and the city council to take a look at it. We anticipate it being to the planning commission probably after the first of the year and then back to you for some review after that. So there's no deadline for this other than just want to complete this. This was actually funded with some Wasatch Front Regional Council
Right.
transportation and land use connection money. So.
Yeah, no, it's a good process to go through and a lot of good feedback.
Yeah, and really groundbreaking. Yeah.
You spoke for one line in there about transit adjacent housing, but I didn't see a definition. For purposes of your plan, what is transit adjacent? 300 feet from the train stop, quarter mile from the bus stop? What does transit adjacent mean from this report?
Yeah, so our focus was really on creating density and creating what could become transit nodes. So it wasn't like, here's a bus stop, let's build around it. It's more like, let's build density so it could work as a transit node in the future. So it's kind of reversing the flow a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, I believe, Council, you had some questions. Go ahead.
Just procedural question. When we adopt this, or when we accept this by resolution, I think you said it'll come eventually, would it be considered an amendment to the general plan or an advisory document? I'm curious.
Good.
Not at that time. No. When we request you to accept this, basically, we're just asking you to accept the plan for the work that was done. We may change some things. We may, move things around. We don't know for sure before we come back and say we want to adopt it as part of the general plan. So there will be some more meetings and more discussion before we actually attach it to an ordinance or to the general plan.
So in that event, I would hope there would be ample opportunities for the public also to see it. We spent how many years on the general plan? 3 years or so.
Yeah.
I hope there's ample opportunities for the public also to put input in before we adopted that, actually amended the general plan.
And we've had a lot of citizen input already on some of these town centers, so we know that we've got to make sure we have them involved as well.
The data changes quickly, so I hope it doesn't take as long as the general plan.
That's what I was
Yeah,
gonna
well-
say, yeah.
What do you
All
want
due
to delay?
diligence.
As long as we have the consistent direction. Is that going to be the question?
Well, it was similar to Councilman Roberts, just, I know we talked about the transportation plan. I think I asked Clint if that, us approving it by ordinance, if that gives a deference. If we want to, developers look at this and say, hey, they've approved this plan, it's part of their general plan now, that's why we have the general plan, so they can have an idea of what we're what we're interested in, what we think is the best route. So to Councilman Roberts' point, just so we make sure that it's a discussion that we have and have ample time to discuss it before we make it, changes to the general plan, including a new town center or maybe moving other town centers to not town center definitions. So, yeah, just piggybacking off what you said.
Just really quick too, and the purpose of what we asked them to do with looking at those town centers was really to see, part of it was to see which ones are viable as a walkable mixed-use town center. Our observations, and even some of what Wasatch Front Regional Council has been recently coming forward with, is we sometimes, with these new plans, have gone a little bit overboard in designating too many of these as walkable. Some of them will never be that. They just got constraints. Notably, 193 goes right through our town center there in the north of town. That's going to make it hard to have walkability across that area. So part of that was that analysis, and I think really everything that they've done is, I would say, is consistent with our current general plan, with the exception of we asked them to think big. So you've got things like the South Gate Town Center that really aren't anticipated in the general plan, but not necessarily inconsistent. So this will be, your acceptance of this will allow us to move forward with some of those individual planning efforts that would have lots and lots of public input at that point. And I will note, as some of you know, there's already been a bit of public input, including from many of you, right, in this process. So we'll continue that.
Okay, those are good.
And you'll see it in the document, but another thing to be aware of where it has those tables that say this is the estimated growth for the next 5-10 years. That's based on, we looked at all the market data and the trends and economic analysis for where that's going. It's not a prescriptive, you need to build exactly this much, no more, no less.
Right.
And then same thing in the appendix, we have those site plans that were drawn up by the urban design firm. They're not meant to be this is exactly what the site needs to look like. It's meant to paint the vision of to showcase that it can be done, here's how it could be done potentially. But, so that's just something to note as you read it. They're not prescriptive site plans, it's not prescriptive numbers, but it's good to give you an idea of what the market and what the landscape could be.
I have two comments. The first one is, again, thanks for doing this, because we had brought up a number of times in the past about some of the town centers, to Chad's point, especially the Gordon and Fairfield, So thank you for doing this and doing such a thorough job. I know you guys reached out to a lot of people, a lot of groups. I actually spoke with someone on my way in here tonight, and you all spoke with the Youth City Council, and they were very, happy to be a part of the process. I know this is not final, but will we have access to your presentation at any point?
Sure. Yes, I can provide.
And then I just also like to be on record to remind that it did take a long time for the general plan to be adopted for all of the reasons. But then we did have a catastrophic situation that took place in 2020 that we all might remember, that now is like AD almost. And so things have changed quite a bit. And so I'm appreciative to Chad for bringing up the fact that a lot of these changes are not crazy different from what the general plan currently says. But as far as like population growth and, people are working from home now, and there are a lot of things that have shifted in our city. And so I think having something like this be more proactive and potentially not take 3 years for us to look into is necessary, because there are some different dynamics here than there were in the past.
Yep, you're right. And it's a great point. I might just add that the town plan, or the Layton formula, our Bible, right? And we use that, and we said, how can we implement that? So we have this description of town centers, we have them identified. It's just really that next, how do we take those next steps? So there's very little that changes it. It's really just, like you say, progressing along that line.
And how to implement what
What you already agreed on.
So here's a what-if scenario. I'll look to Lon on this, because typically on your general plan, you do want to review it every 7 to 10 years. And we're coming upon that, aren't we? I mean, it's back, because that was, it's been longer than that.
It's been 5 years since
2019.
Yeah. And it was, but it took 3 years to that one, so I guess realistically, I know that as part of this whole
Yeah.
process, I mean, we do need to kind of maybe look at some of those modifications as well, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's certainly something we're going to start to look at in the next couple
Yes.
of years for sure.
Yes.
I don't, the 2019 effort was a very comprehensive general plan, almost a redo of everything from
Yeah,
before.
it was.
This one maybe would be more of a refinement process, or maybe not quite as many years, it'll get refined here.
And that's why I bring that up, because basically it took 20 years to modify that plan and finally get it going, or adopt it in 19. So I don't want to see that again, even though we've got, you know, these other plans that kind of now play into it, but I really think we got to stay in the forefront of our overall general plan as well.
From someone that got involved in your general plan right at the last, you know, kind of the 10-yard line going towards the goal, you did a great job. I've said this many times. I love Layton's general plan. It is a great general plan, and that's good news because I think, you know, subsequent revisions to that general plan are going to be just that. They're going to be refinements. They're not going to be that comprehensive need to redo everything. So great job on that. I can't say enough about Layton Forward. It's a great plan.
All right. Well, thank you. We really appreciate your efforts here and the presentation and getting the wheels thinking on all the possibilities we have available to us here. So, again, thank you very much. And I really want to say thanks to the Planning Commission, those that are here in their attendance. We appreciate this joint meeting because we don't have them really, quite honestly, but this is a great opportunity to share with each other. So, thank you. We have about 4 minutes till our next meeting. We have 2 more items on here. So I would say, do you guys need a break and be able to start the next meeting on time, and then we can come back to just these last 2 items? Then, you guys good with that? If so, I'll look for a motion to adjourn, knowing that we'll come back into the short meeting.
Sorry, just a question. Do we have to have the number 5 in this meeting? Can we do it in the other meeting?
Well, you've got 6 too. So
Well,
I
6
think-
I know. but
6 we can.
I
Yeah, I mean, we could do either way, but I mean,
don't know.
I think the key thing I'm looking at is, okay, we've been notorious late out there, and I don't want to continue that process. And so I want to end this meeting and be able to come back, knowing that we're going to have to come back anyway.
It'd probably be better just to do 5 and 6 together on this agenda since it's not noticed on the other agenda.
Okay, spoken by our council. Thank you very much for your advice.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, thank you, you guys.
ahead and get our Layton City Council meeting for this evening started. It is December 5th. I want to acknowledge those in the audience and say thank you very much for attending, and of course anyone online. As customary, we're going to go ahead and start our meeting with a prayer and a pledge, and being that it's a new month, it will be Council Member Roberts' turn to conduct, so I'll turn the time over to him.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll begin the meeting with an invocation, then invite everyone to stand for to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're very grateful to be able to meet this evening to conduct the business of the great city of Layton. We're grateful, Father, for the opportunity to live, work, and recreate here in this beautiful area. We're grateful, Father, for all the people before us and currently who work so hard to make this a great place to live and a great community. The employees of the city, as well as the residents and people who volunteer their time to do so. Father, we're grateful for all of the many blessings in our lives in this time of year that we have to gather together as friends and family. And we pray that we will each take great advantage of that and the opportunity to associate with others. We ask, Father, for guidance this evening as we conduct this business, that we will do it judiciously and keep in mind of all the perspectives, and especially the residents and those who rely on this city for their good way of life. We pray for these things, Father, and we ask this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
If you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for that beautiful prayer and for leading us in a Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Council, before we get going on anything, we do have 2 sets of minutes that need to be approved. If any of you have any corrections, can you please make it known? Otherwise, I'll look for someone to make the motion, and if you could, read out the date and the meeting. After the musical chairs.
If I was sitting that, it would have been a 5th grader.
We couldn't see you. Okay.
Clint, do you have any law books I can sit on or anything?
Okay, so I'll bring it back to the council for our minutes. If someone would like to make a motion on those, if you accept them as written.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we adopt the minutes for the Layton City Council work meeting October 3rd, 2024, and the Layton City Council meeting November 7th, 2024.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. Okay, it's been moved in second that we accept the minutes as written. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We'll go on to item number 2, which is our municipal events announcements, and even though we're still dealing with the chair issue, I know Councilman Roberts will have some of the announcements for us. I'll turn the time over to him.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, a lot of work has gone into lighting up our park out here. Parks and Rec, the Parks Commission or Parks Department works all year long at improving the lights before Christmas. We had a great event last week, turning on the lights. Santa was here to, put his magic, into the Christmas spirit. But that will be open 5 to 11 p.m., I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
5 to 11 p.m. each night. Bring the family. I think last year, did you say 60,000 vehicles drove through? And that doesn't count all the foot traffic.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that was included.
Attendance, okay, that includes foot traffic. But
parking over here east of the surf and swim building. There's a lot of walkways to walk through. Hot chocolate from the Rotarians quite often, and the train runs. Yeah.
Every night?
Every night.
No, except Sundays.
Well,
Bring the kids Monday through Saturday for train rides.
That's only until the 21st at this point.
Okay.
So maybe not on the Monday, Tuesday before Christmas. It's questionable.
Okay. In addition, there's a lot of things during the cold weather months. You can go over to the museum right over here and see one new program that'll start in January called Toddlers on the Trail. Every second Wednesday of each month, I think 10 to 11 a.m. Bring the toddlers out, 2 to 5 year olds, and they'll have different activities to get the kids involved. In January, they'll learn about animals and how to identify tracks and trails from animals. $10 per session for that. So again, every second Wednesday, 10 to 11 a.m. at the museum.
That's a new program. That's
Yep.
interesting. I'm glad to see that. Okay. Does anyone else have some announcements?
I have one announcement from the Layton Communities That Care. On January 9th at the New Ames School, which is up at the Weber State Davis campus, we'll have a course for the Everyday Strong presentation, and that's a class that teaches how to build resilience through relationships. It's for young people and adults, and you can go to dbhutah.org to register for that, and that'll be from 5 to 6:30 p.m. There are lots of other classes that we offer through the partnership that Layton CTC has with Davis Behavioral Health, and they are free to the community.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you, Council, for those good municipal announcements. I'm going to go ahead and go down. We do not have any verbal petitions tonight, so we'll go ahead and go down to citizens' comments. So this is a portion of the meeting that if you're not here for the public hearing but have a different, would like to offer your advice or question for the council, you're welcome to come up and ask it. Just please state your name and what city you're from, and note that we probably won't respond right here, but I guarantee you we will act on it and get back to you. So, citizens' comment portion.
Michael Christensen, 1157 North, 2275 West in Layton here. I won't take too much time. You may have seen me around. I have a strong interest in our land use here in Layton. Most of you have an email in your box about 915 Gordon Avenue. I'm not going to go into big detail on that, other than to say, having read through the Layton Forward General Plan, I recognize how wonderful that Main Street corridor is intended to be, but there's a distinct lack of guidance in that document of how to actually develop that land compared to other parcels and town centers and urban centers that are pretty well defined. So there is some guidance needed to the city, probably from this bench, on what to actually do other than just label it a Main Street corridor there. My other comment would be just on the meeting here in the back about the town center proposed for Highway 193 at Church Street being de-proposed. I've been through that area. There's a lot of development going on right on the north side, and yes, that's across Highway 193 from an already existing, fairly well-developed commercial area, and you are literally one pedestrian walkway bridge over 193 away from making that a walkable area. Just as we did, several months ago, the Cave Creek Trail going across I-15 down south side here. Don't write that off. Leave space in there to put a pedestrian trail 25 years from now, and you could have something. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll definitely consider your comments, sir. Okay, does anyone else wish to address this body?
Good evening, Mayor and staff. My name is Claude Young, 1198 North, 100 East here in Layton. Recently, I think it was yesterday, a notification was sent out from the city about the parking ordinance for the wintertime, street parking. It's an ordinance that's been in effect for quite a while. So there was a lot of feedback on the site when it was put out about the on-street parking from 1 December till end of February.
Mm-hmm.
The main question was, is it going to be enforced? We have people that rigidly adhere to it, and many, many others just disregard it. So the question is it going to be enforced? I know recent discussion that I heard that there was too many parking places in Layton and a move to do away with them. But that doesn't extend into the residential area. There's many houses and many families that have extra vehicles. There's no place to put them unless they take up their yard to make parking places out of it that has to meet certain requirements. So the question that was arisen on the post that was given was, is it going to be enforced, or is it just going to be sitting out there as a symbol?
Thank you very much for your comment there and concern. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing that there's none, let's go ahead and go on then to our consent items. We do have 3 items tonight that we need to take action on, of which I've stated many times before that this council can go ahead and take one single action on all 3 items once they've been presented. So at this time, I'd like to turn the time over to Mr. Tracy Probert, our Finance Director, for item number A, which is our audit and finance report.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you tonight. I'm here with Robert Wood from HBME. He's your independent auditor, and they've completed their audit, and we've compiled the annual comprehensive financial report. We've reviewed that with the audit committee. Just a couple of highlights. If citizens were to go into this report and want to know the best information, the most summarized information, they should go to page 11, which is called Management's Discussion and Analysis. That analysis is about 10 or 11 pages long and hits all of the highlights related to the city financials in that one spot. I mean, obviously you could thumb through the rest of the details that are required, reporting requirements, but that management discussion analysis is the highlight of the 160-page document. The one thing that's great to report is the city finds itself in excellent financial condition. Excellent meaning that we have good reserves, but they're also reasonable reserves. Not more than what I would expect us to have as a city of our size with the development and projects and things that we have going on. We don't want to run ourselves down to the bone and then, be in a tight situation. So I would say we have really good reserves, but they're also reasonable. That would be across all of our funds, our general fund, and then our water, sewer, storm sewer, street lighting, refuse, our emergency medical services fund. All of the funds that are accounted for and that are presented in this document find themselves in good financial position. I'll turn a little bit of time over to your auditor, and then at the end of that, if there are any questions, if not, I would recommend that the council accept this report for review.
Pleasure to be with you this evening. Thanks for having us. We appreciate being able to provide these professional service to your organization and give you an opinion on your financial statements that's been presented by your finance director. I know we discussed those, so I'm going to be very brief. Already in our previous meeting, there's 3 reports that we do. The first one is the independent auditor's report on the financial statements in their entirety, which covers your entity-wide statements on governmental activities, business activities, and then all of your governmental funds, your business type activities, which is your proprietary funds, utility funds, EMS, swimming pool, other stuff like that. And then you've got some comparative schedules and some non-major combining schedules for both the balance sheet and the income statements in the back of the book. Based on all of that information that's presented within this financial statement, we feel that they are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. and we don't feel there's any material misstatements within the funds as presented within the book. So it's the best opinion. It's an unmodified opinion that we can give your organization. There's 2 other reports that are in the back of the book. The first one covers your controls that you set up over financial reporting, and also your compliance with laws, contracts, agreements, and so forth. That is not an opinion. It's just a report. We didn't find any discrepancies at the report, so we don't feel you have any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that need to be reported in accordance with standards. And then the last one is put out by the state auditor's office, who asks us to look at things every year and certain things on a 3-year rotation basis, such as your adoption of budgets, holding public hearings, the way you set governmental fees and how those funds are used, what you do with restricted taxes or revenues that come in. Do you have any inter-fund loans between the enterprise funds or transfers between the enterprise funds and your governmental funds, and so forth? There's a whole list of things that you can go through in the document on what we tested this year. Happy to report there is no discrepancies, no significant weaknesses or internal control deficiencies that we need to report to council or the citizens in reference to your handling of that situation. So with that, I'd leave it to if there's any questions that Tracy or I can answer for you.
Okay, council, do you have any questions? I know we went over this in detail in our work meeting, and we got most of our questions answered there, but certainly.
So just
Councilor
a
Bloxham?
question on behalf of the residents, just that you are independent, right?
Correct.
You're outside source. You're not an internal audit. It's as an independent audit, and that you're really just providing this as a way for us as the elected officials to ensure that the city is being managed financially properly, right?
That's totally correct.
Thank you.
You also have an audit committee with 2 independent residents of Layton City who we met with earlier tonight at 5 o'clock, and we walked through the statements and we talked about what risks, are there any findings and recommendations that our office had. We talked about the adjustments that had to be made. So they also go through this statement in detail. So we appreciate the time and effort that they take as independent auditors, that you actually have formed a committee with residents who care about the statements and want to make sure that the city's putting out a good financial report. So we feel that that's been done with all hands on board.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to mention those 2 individuals, Van Christensen and Doug Velston. They're residents here in Layton, and as you mentioned, they went through this report as well. One of them word by word, word for word, and just grateful for their lending their expertise and their interest in this area. It's very helpful, and we have confidence in them, obviously confidence in you. Thank you, Robert, for you and your firm in taking care of us, and you do this, your expertise as well. You mentioned 16 other cities and other counties and other special districts that you work with. We appreciate your expertise in helping us and helping Tracy in the finance department. We appreciate it.
Happy to provide them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I would echo that as well. Along with our 2 residents, Doug and Van, who, boy, we couldn't have had a better pick than having those 2 represent us or the citizens, more importantly. So with that, council, I'll bring it back to you. Okay, no more questions. Let's go ahead and move on. Item number B, and Mr. Steve Jackson's going to present this item to us, which is the first amendment for an interlocal agreement between Layton City and Weber Basin Water Conservancy District.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, it's good to be with you tonight. For your consideration is Resolution 24-35. It's the first amendment to an interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. If you recall, back in October, we brought before you the agreement to spend some grant funds that we received from the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and the amount of $2.5 million. If you recall, that grant proposal was to implement a pipeline project through connecting Holmes Reservoir to Andy Adams Reservoir. You can see in this alignment here, one of the things I would like to note is based on the feedback and conversations with property owners, we have moved that pipeline to the west and gone through the existing easements. It'll be a little bit more challenging to make that work, but we think that's a viable option, and so that project is actually out to bid. Bids close tomorrow on that, so that'll be coming back to you for your consideration in a future meeting. So part of the process was also the second was eligible parcels that would receive some funding for allowing them to convert from flood irrigation to pressurized culinary water. As part of the discussions, the take rate on that offer that was made was not as high as we had hoped, and so Weber Basin asked us to go back and reevaluate maybe the numbers we were offering. We increased the amount that we offered by $2,500 per lot for the sprinkler system, depending on the size. And then we also increased the amount from a 10-year to a 15-year cost differential. As we sent those back out, we received 2 additional properties that did want to participate in that, but it left us with about a 20% take rate. So with that, the $2.5 million, we felt like it was important to go back to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity and propose a third project for this grant funding. And that project would be a pipeline from or along Church Street, basically between Fairfield and Fort Layton. That project would allow us to connect our Hobbs Reservoir to the pipeline that just got installed down Gordon Avenue. So all 3 of the reservoirs would then be connected together. So the proposal for this amendment is to basically use the funds to complete projects 1 and 2, and then any remaining funds we would put towards this project 3. And that's summarized here in this slide. So we anticipate the cost for project 2 is not going to be $870,000 now. It will be closer to probably $350,000. So that leaves approximately $700,000 that may be available if project 1 goes the way we think it will. And so we'd like to put that towards project 3, as that was the next project on the list for our secondary water system to be completed. And so that would bring this money into good use for the city. So with that, is there any questions I can answer before I
Council?
Thank you, Mayor.
go ahead? Yeah.
Steve, could you, and we make decisions and then months later, we talk about grants for things that we've decided,
Yeah.
long ago. Could you talk about the significance of both of these projects, these pipelines, as it relates to the water master plan and secondary water? And
Yeah. So as
Thank you.
the city is growing and expanding, we've saw the need to be able to utilize the water resources in the city to the best of the way we can as the staff. And one of those things that we realized was that we have 3 very major reservoirs on the east side of town. We have a 4th Davis-Weber Canal Reservoir here on the screen that you can see in the middle. And with those reservoirs, the water resources there are possibly underutilized because we didn't have the pipe network in place to be able to put that water to its optimal use. So this pipeline connecting all of these together will allow us to create that backbone loop system to allow us as future growth and demand comes, that we'll be able to take demand that would have gone onto our culinary system, put it onto this outdoor secondary system, and then utilize the culinary system for those demands. Into the future, it'll allow us to keep the costs of the water system down for everyone, for all the users on it, and also give us a really reliable source of water even through the droughts. These connections will allow us to move water between reservoirs and into the system fairly efficiently and without a lot of risk to the droughts that we saw a few years ago. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I don't want to overstate, maybe I am by saying that, but we've had years and years and years ago, wells were dug and people looking into the future. I mean, this is another project looking into the future to conserve water and be good stewards of what we have. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a good project. Okay. I have a question, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So Steve, I appreciate you all reviewing this and saying, okay, well, if we're not going to use all of this money, let's see if we can have another project to apply it to. My question is about the other 80%. So the 20% of the residents who said, yeah, let's do this. If the other 80 decide they want to come on board, is it too late for them to do that? Is there a, sorry, we tried and now you're out?
Yeah, basically the funding that we've received is tied to that ARPA funding that we have. So the deadline to have all of these in place is the end of this month. And so, this was kind of the last final offer that they received. And that was indicated to them in the letter that there were strict deadlines for this money to be allocated and spent. So unfortunately for those that didn't want it, that was their choice. We didn't want to force anybody onto it, but we wanted to give them an opportunity that we thought was a really great offer. And so in the future, they'll just need to continue doing what they're doing, or maybe something else would come their way. But as far as this grant goes, that opportunity has closed.
And just one more follow-up. So the 2 additional that you got with the second offer, are you giving that same second offer to the original folks who agreed?
Yep. Everyone was the ones that had already accepted were given a new letter saying these are the new numbers, and then anybody else who accepted was given those same numbers.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you'll convey back, or have you conveyed back now to those ones that were willing to?
Yes, they all received the second.
They've all received
They
the
also
news
received
that-
the second letter. Their letter said, "Hey, because of the interest, there is more funding available. So this is what we're changing yours to and increasing it to."
No, I think my question really was, do they know now the offer's off the table, that we didn't get a big enough take rate, so they don't even get to participate now?
Oh yes, the original, the letter, the second letter.
Sorry.
If I understand
My
the question. Yeah, the second letter that went out said there is no future offers because the timeline is closed. There's the end of this month, we have to have all these contracts finished. So
The ones that accepted are able to still proceed forward,
absolutely,
right?
yes.
That's
yes.
really what my question
Okay.
was, just make sure.
Yeah, those
Okay.
those
Sorry
that
about
have
that.
accepted, we're moving forward with them, and the remaining funds will be put to use on this other project. So
Okay, I believe Councilman Bloxham has a question.
Yeah, I mean, this project 3, was this, did we move this project up now?
not necessarily.
Just using other funds.
It was actually going to be in next year's budget, and
Okay.
so this will just help us be able to fund the $2.7 million part of it, with whatever's
Great.
left.
Well, thank you for thinking on your feet and doing that. I mean,
Yeah, we want to.
it's just moving it up and having other funds pay for it. It's great. So thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Roberts?
I guess I do have a question. Long term, I know a big sum of this money came to us with the intent to eliminate a lot of that inefficient irrigation.
Mm-hmm.
Long term, is there plans or thoughts that have been put into putting in pressurized secondary into this area of the city?
Long term, no. The economics of putting in that system would not benefit the overall balance of the water system. If you look back in the master plan, there was very specific areas that could benefit from it economically, and others that would be really cost prohibitive to go back in and convert places that are already serviced with culinary with that secondary system. So we anticipate that a lot of these people or these properties will develop someday. They're fairly large parcels, a lot of them, and so the infill development will probably move them from flood irrigation to the culinary system in the future.
Okay, I have one more question. Knowing that these are ARPA funds and typically there's been timelines on performance of work, what's the timeline then on project number 3, knowing that these funds would then rotate into that?
It would still be needed to be finished by the end of 2026. So we would
feel
anticipate.
confident in making up that shortfall on where we're sitting now on that funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
Alrighty.
I just had one more, and this is more of a comment and a kudos. When this was presented to us the first time, there was a resident who came up and mentioned about the location of the pipe being moved. And so I just wanted to say thank you for taking that into consideration, for moving that, even though, like you said, it's a little bit more challenging, but it made sense to me in seeing that you could avoid going down the middle of someone's property, and moving it down a ways. And so I appreciate you and the department for taking that into consideration and then moving it.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions then?
So obviously staff would recommend that you approve this and adopt it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, as stated earlier, for thinking of a good way to utilize those additional funds. Okay, we'll go on to item number C of our consent items, which Mr. Chad Wilkinson is going to present a plat amendment.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is a fairly straightforward plat amendment for the Eastgate Business Park subdivision. Just as a reminder of where that's located, you can see on your map that red dot up there, the north end of our city, about 3675 North Fairfield Road. You're very familiar with this property. You've talked about it a lot lately. This is, again, the Janicki building up there, Keomac, over where my cursor is, over on the right-hand side, and then the new building that's being built by, or that has been under construction for some time, and under a current remodel by JL Properties is there. This is, again, facilitating additional development on the site. This plat will divide two existing lots into multiple lots. You can see there's lot 108, 107, 110 there on this slide, and then part of 110 and 111, and then a little sliver called 109 there. This will facilitate several different buildings on separate lots there on the site. This has been reviewed by our planning commission. These two last slides are just the existing plat as shown. You can see those two lots there, 105 and 106, that are being divided into those multiple lots. So with that, this has been reviewed by the planning commission. They've recommended approval of the subdivision amendment. We would also forward that recommendation and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Council, do you have any questions regarding this? Okay.
Okay.
You must have done a good job the first time around, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up our consent items then. So Council, I'll bring it back to you for action. So if somebody would like to make a proposal on the consent items, and if you could state the resolution or amendment number or the reference to the consent item, I'd appreciate it.
I can do that, Mayor. I move that we accept the audit and financial reports for fiscal year ending June 30, 2024 as presented, and that are we adopting amendments or approving?
Resolution.
Approving.
Excuse me?
Approved, thank you. Yeah. And that we approve resolution 24-35, which is the first amendment for the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Weaver Basin, and that we approve the plat amendment for the Eastgate Business Park subdivision, third amendment.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the consent items. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to our public hearing portion of our meeting. We do have one item on the agenda, and once again, Mr. Chad Wilkinson will present the item. And then once he presents, then Council, you're welcome to deliberate and open it up for public comment.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is the last piece of the puzzle for a project that's been going on quite a long time. As you know, this is the Anderson's Legacy subdivision. This last piece is a right-of-way vacation, also listed as a street vacation. We're going to use that interchangeably. This is a unique vacation because it does include something that used to be a street. So that is part of the old Gentile Street alignment. Here's the property again, there at about 2700 East Gentile Street. This is the little sliver that we're talking about. This right-of-way once was the previous alignment of Gentile Street. It's now going to be used as part of the applicant's lot to provide them a little bit more buildable area. We've reviewed this request and feel like it is appropriate to vacate this right of way and allow that to become part of the applicant's property and give them a little bit more buildable area on that lot. Again, you can see that new reconfiguration of Gentile Street right there on that slide. Good shot of it. Again, it was reconfigured from where it used to be in that location. Here's just the portion that will be appended to that plat right there. Same thing we were just talking about. This has been reviewed again by the city staff, and we are recommending approval. This particular process in our state and local codes requires that we do have a public hearing, so we would recommend that the council open that public hearing, take public comment, and then we would recommend that the council approve the ordinance vacating that section of the Gentile Street right-of-way. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions, council?
It says there'll be a 7-foot easement for utilities. Is there a lot of utilities through that area? Or
that's just our standard public utility and drainage easement that'll be added to that plat. Yep.
Okay. There's not a lot of existing.
I don't think there's anything in there anymore, is there, Steve? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I just have a procedural question on when there is a vacation like this. Is there a requirement for any exchange of money? Can you explain the vacation just for us and also for the public?
Yeah, it kind of depends on how that right-of-way was first secured by the city for the street or whatever the improvement may be. In this case, there's not a requirement because of the way it was dedicated previously. Typically, these will go back to the adjoining property owners, the abutting property owners, because that's typically where those properties came from. There are cases, though, where the city has made a purchase to obtain that right of way, and in some cases, that does require that those folks buy that right of way back. We had actually came before the council not long ago a fee simple transaction that occurred because we found that the right of way, what was being used as right of way, was actually a parcel. It was an existing real property that we needed to enter into an agreement. It was deemed to be an insignificant parcel because it really wasn't big enough to do anything but be appended to that adjoining property. So that does happen occasionally too, where we find that that's the situation. But I think that's just the answer is that it depends. Depends on the details. Anything you want to add to that, Clint?
Nope.
Okay, that was good.
It's because he said the magic word for our lawyers. It depends.
Yeah.
Clint's not going to need to say
He's got
anything
it.
more than that.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll look for an action to open up our public hearing at this time.
Motion to open the public hearing.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now turn the time over to the public for any comment they wish to make regarding this one item on our public hearing. So it's your turn, and if you don't want to comment, it's totally fine too. Okay, seeing that there's no comments regarding our public hearing on item number A, I'll bring it back to the council to close our public hearing and take action on ordinance 24-32.
Okay. I move that we close the public hearing and approve ordinance 24-32 for the street vacation.
Okay, very much. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved in second. Being that it's a public hearing, I got to do roll call vote. So I'll start down here with Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Okay, Councilman Smith Edmondson.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Bloxham.
Yes.
Councilman Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous. So thank you very much. Council, that pretty much concludes our agenda for this evening. Unless anyone has any unfinished business. I do know we do need to go back into an additional work meeting. So I look for a motion to close our city council meeting and go back into a work meeting.
I move we close this meeting and go back to our work meeting.
Okay. Second? Okay, I'll acknowledge the second. So everyone attending tonight, thank you very much. Thank you for all those that help us broadcast this meeting as well. So hopefully y'all have a good evening.